Real estate mogul, reality TV star, former US president. You know the name. Donald Trump is one of those figures who just seems to constantly command global attention, sparking endless debate and, let's be honest, a whole lot of fascination. Today, we're going to dive into the story of his life as our source material lays it out. And we're kicking it off with a quote from the man himself. This really just sets the stage, doesn't it? It's the persona he's been crafting for decades, this character defined by an unyielding, almost confrontational style. But that leads to the big question, the one our source material really tries to get at. Behind that public image, who is the real Donald Trump? The picture it paints is way more complex than you might think. So, let's get into it. You see, his story, as our source presents it, is just filled with contradictions. I mean, think about it. He's the son of a millionaire who somehow became a symbol for the working class. A businessman with a trail of bankruptcies who successfully branded himself as the ultimate winner. So, this isn't your typical biography. Nope. This is a narrative about the relentless, lifelong pursuit of power. It's really the story of how one man, driven by this insatiable need for the spotlight, managed to break pretty much every rule and still, somehow, come out on top. So, where did it all start? Well, to really get the guy, our source takes us all the way back to his early years. It was this mix of immense privilege and a super competitive environment that basically forged his core philosophy: win, win, win at all costs. And this timeline, wow, it just shows you the incredible speed of his early life. He was born into this 23-room mansion and was, believe it or not, technically a millionaire by the time he was 8. After some trouble at school, he was sent off to a military academy for discipline. A bit later, he avoided the Vietnam draft thanks to student deferments and a medical exemption for heel spurs, and by the time he was just 25, he was running the whole family empire. And this right here, this was a huge moment. The source describes him going to the opening of the Verrazano Bridge. He looks around and notices that the brilliant engineer who designed the whole thing was just an anonymous face in the crowd. And right there, he decides, nope, not for me. He realized success without recognition was basically failure. The spotlight wasn't just a bonus, it was the entire point. So, armed with that philosophy and a whole lot of his father's money, he sets his sights on Manhattan. His mission wasn't just to put up buildings, it was to build a brand that screamed luxury, opulence, and power. His strategy was pretty simple but totally audacious. He'd find these struggling properties in amazing locations and give them this glamorous, usually very golden makeover. And the key thing, every single project, from skyscrapers to casinos, even a board game, had his name plastered on it, usually in big, shiny gold letters. And you gotta ask, did it work? Well, this number says it all. A staggering 98%. By the 1990s, the Trump brand was more recognizable than almost anything else. He had done it. He'd turned his own name into a national symbol of wealth, achieving that fame he'd craved since that day at the bridge. But here's the thing. According to our source, building this empire wasn't just about concrete and steel. It was about building a myth. Trump became a true master of the media, an expert at blurring the lines between what was real and what was performance to control his own story. And he wasn't exactly shy about his methods either. With this quote, he basically admits his whole strategy: give people the story they want to hear. He understood that perception was often way more powerful than reality, and a little exaggeration, as he put it, was just part of the game. This is where it gets kind of wild. The source talks about one of his most infamous tactics, the John Barron persona. He would allegedly pretend to be his own publicist, calling up reporters with these sensational, often totally made-up stories about himself. He even used this trick to talk his way onto the Forbes 400 list of the world's richest people. And here's the gap between the myth and the money. While his so-called spokesman was claiming he was worth $100 million, his actual wealth at the time? Closer to $5 million. It was a massive stretch, but you know what? It worked. The public perception of his immense wealth became its own kind of reality. But behind that golden facade, the financial reality was often, well, let's just say it was turbulent. This number, 6, that's how many times his businesses filed for bankruptcy just in the 1990s. And yet, through it all, he masterfully kept up his public image as this infallible business genius. And controversy, well, it was always part of the story. Our source goes into a long history of legal battles, from lawsuits about housing discrimination early on to accusations of financial misconduct, and a number of personal scandals that have followed him for years. I mean, the sheer volume of his legal fights is just mind-boggling. Over 30,500 lawsuits involving him and his businesses. If nothing else, this shows he has always been a fighter, whether it was in the boardroom or the courtroom. By the early 2000s, you could say the Trump brand was kind of losing its shine. So what does he do? He pulls off what might be one of the greatest rebrands in modern history. The Apprentice put him back on the map for a whole new generation, not as a controversial developer, but as the ultimate, decisive, no-nonsense boss. And man, that show was a monster. And that renewed fame, that carefully crafted image of the ultimate boss, well, that became the launchpad for his next and most audacious venture. The man who conquered real estate and TV now had his eyes on the White House. His political career was just as unconventional as his business one. He got his start in politics by questioning President Obama's birthplace. He announced his run for president coming down a golden escalator. And then he just rode this wave of populist anger to a victory that stunned the world. His presidency was marked by a ton of firsts, including becoming the only president ever to be impeached twice. So when you step back and look at all of it, the triumphs, the controversies, the whole spectacle, what's the core theme of this incredible story? Our source argues that if you strip everything else away, you're left with a story that's really about just one thing. And that one thing is just sheer, unrelenting persistence. Think about it. He has been written off time and time and time again. After business failures, after personal scandals, after a major political defeat. And yet, every single time, he has managed to claw his way back to the center of the arena. Our source wraps it all up with this pretty powerful idea. It suggests that Trump's legacy, whether you love it or hate it, is really cemented by his absolute refusal to ever admit defeat. In his world, losers are the ones who quit and are forgotten. The winners, the ones who resist, are the ones who get written into the history books. And that leaves us with one final big question to chew on. When you look at this entire extraordinary journey of bankruptcies and billions, of scandals and summits, of being fired from the presidency only to fight all the way back again, what's the ultimate takeaway from this uniquely American story of just relentless ambition?